Hey everyone and welcome back. If you're anything like me, you probably shop around to find your containers and grab any that catch your eye. Here's a brief look at some of my collection. From what I've seen, you can get the best prices on the most unique containers at thrift stores and flea markets. Being in the right place at the right time also helps. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, these containers don't come with a lid or a suitable one at that. This leaves you to either search for something that will work or take matters into your own hands. Luckily, we can make our own airtight lids right now using a substance called Oogoo. Oogoo is extremely cheap and easy to make, so it will take your container game, DIY game, and perhaps your terrarium game to the next level. You might be familiar with this substance already, but for those who aren't, Oogoo can be a mixture of silicone and water or silicone cornstarch and water. These mixtures turn into a quick curing rubber-like substance. Oogoo can be used for a host of different purposes, but in this demonstration I will show you simply how to make it and some ways that I was able to seal various containers. The rest is up to you and your creativity. Regardless of what you use Oogoo for, it is cheap and easy to make. Also, it's a little messy to make, but it cleans up easily. Additionally, I suggest doing this in a well-ventilated area. So what materials do you need to make Oogoo? You'll need some 100% silicone, a liquid element, cornstarch, a mixing utensil, and mixing bowls. You may also want to consider using some gloves, some containers for molds, petroleum jelly, and a cutting utensil. As you can see, the initial cost of your materials will be pretty cheap, not to mention that you can seal numerous containers with just a bit of these components. I was able to seal 5 containers using a single tube of silicone caulking. First, I will show you how to make a basic Oogoo, and then some cool ways that you can add a creative spin to it. Start by putting a few drops of water or food coloring into your mixing bowl. Then squirt a decent amount of silicone into the same bowl and stir the two together. I'm using GE Silicone 1. Typically I would use GE Silicone 2 for my projects, but it won't work for this application because of the way it cures. There's not a specific ratio for any of this. Experiment with different amounts until you have found one that works for you. The more liquid you add, the faster the silicone will become firm. Once your silicone has become a single, relatively uniform lump like this, it's time to put it into a mold. We need to work fast because in about 5 minutes this will be too firm to work with. I wanted to make a large cork for this jar here. I'll be using this blue dish as a mold. I determined that I could create the right sized cork simply by eyeballing it. Of course you could do calculated measurements, but I was pretty confident in my estimation. Simply dump the Oogoo into your mold. This version of Oogoo is extremely sticky to begin with, which is why we are using a mold to cast it. To stop it from sticking to your fingers as you press it into the mold, put some petroleum jelly on your fingertips. This will allow you to easily pack the Oogoo into the mold. Pack it the best you can so that any potential air pockets can be removed. Now let it set up for about 10 minutes or until firm. Once you have determined that it's cured, remove it from the mold. Unfortunately, I ended up with a few air pockets. Luckily, they don't affect the functionality of the seal, and you can't even see them when it's in the jar. All that I wanted to do at this point was trim off some of the excess. I think this version looks pretty cool, and it will function just as well. Here's a different version of a clear Oogoo using only water to create a lid for this type of jar. Initially, I wanted to cover all of the threads, but I didn't mix enough, so it simply sits on top of the jar. Regardless, this will still work well to keep the jar sealed. Now I'll show you an alternative way to make Oogoo. I like this version better because you can do more with it. To begin, get a mixing bowl and fill it with some cornstarch. Next, get another mixing bowl and put your liquid component in it. Then put some silicone into the same bowl and stir it up. As is, we currently have the original version of Oogoo, but that's about to change. Scoop this lump into the bowl of cornstarch. Now knead the cornstarch into the Oogoo until it loses most of its tack. Once it stops sticking to other surfaces and feels like silly putty, you're in business. Here's a beaker that I wanted a lid for. I got the Oogoo and just worked it onto the container until I liked the look of it. You could also use this version in a mold like before. Again, let the Oogoo cure for about 10 minutes, then test it out. This created an awesome seal that doesn't look too bad. Here's a cool effect that I was able to pull off by kneading some drops of food coloring into a plain batch of Oogoo. Another way to create a good lid is by putting Oogoo into a mold and then pressing your container into it. The only downside to this method is that gases will build up in the container and try to find a way out. Apply pressure to avoid any complications. This will also happen slightly when creating caps like before. Simply plan for this and you won't have any issues. You could even use an X-Acto knife or blade to cut off sections of the Oogoo as necessary. So what's going on here and why does it work? Simply put, whenever you add the liquid element to the silicone, it acts as a catalyst that causes the silicone to cure faster. Be patient and try different combinations and ratios of your materials. You probably won't get this right the first time, but be patient and you'll quickly get the technique down. In this demonstration, I showed you simply how to seal containers with this incredible substance. It should have given you a brief look into the potential behind Oogoo. The applications of it really are limitless. With a little imagination and creative problem solving, you can use Oogoo for a ton of DIY projects. And that's what Surfer Design is all about, bringing DIY and creativity together for real world applications, like sealing these jars for the purpose of making terrariums. To complete this project, let's see how well they hold water.